So what separates Flesh and Blood from other TCGs is that unlike let's say MTG, where we
Yeah.
have to pay to play our equipments, then equip them to our creatures, we start Flesh and Blood just starts the battle with all of your equipments equipped by your hero. Like imagine in the RPG, we come prepared for battle. We don't just say, "Oh, I'm still I'm still naked. Give me time." So there are 4 defensive equipments. The
Yeah.
first one is the helmet.
Okay.
It is a head part, as you can see. Oh, sorry.
There we go. Yeah, yeah.
So it will have the type generic, meaning every hero can use it. Equipment head. Head meaning it's the head part. It's over here.
Yeah.
So we place it over here. Next is the chest part. For those of you who are familiar with Flesh and Blood, this is one of the most iconic cards in the game, which is Fyendal Spring Tunic. It is one of the first legendaries ever printed in Welcome to Wrath, the first ever set of Flesh and Blood. Next are the legs, which is, for me, it's a Phantasmal Footsteps. So there's the difference in these legs. It doesn't say generic, it says Illusionist, meaning it can only be equipped by a hero with an Illusionist card type. One example is my Prism. She's a light Illusionist hero. And the last one is the arms. The arms I'm using is the Wave of Reality. It requires your hero to be Illusionist.
So essentially, like, it's kind of just basically, I guess, forgive me if I'm wrong now.
Yeah.
But basically, like, it's kind of like you have your main. It's like you have your main boss monster, and then basically you're trying to enhance him, like give him equipments.
No, you don't equip. You
Okay.
already start with the equipment.
Oh, you already start with it.
So after that, it will be just punching each other or playing auras,
I see.
enchantments. So no in the new set, Outsiders, you can equip new weapons, but not equipments. There are still no cards up to this date that can equip you new equipments. And the last equipment is of course the weapon. So my weapon is a light illusionist weapon scepter. It's named the Luminaris. So for Sir Phil, I gave him an easier deck to pilot, the Brute, which is Unga Bunga.
Define easy.
Define easy. Just throw a big numbered card, pay the cost, smash.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's 5. So Sir
Halfway.
Phil's equipments are over here.
Okay.
So he's gonna be using Crown of Dominion because there's a nationals event going on, and somebody borrowed one of my equipments, which is their Arcanite Scout Cat.
And these are the other equipments, right?
Yes. So for his chest, this is the boots. This is the most iconic Brute equipment, the legendary Scab Skin Leathers, which gives him extra action points, which we'll talk about later.
Bark bone strapping.
And for the chest, it is the Bark Bone Strapping. Gives him resources or mana in other games. And lastly, it's the Cold Foil Skull Crusher.
What type of foil?
It's a cold foil. So in Flesh and Blood, there are 2 kinds of foil. There's cold foil, which is kind of like this, silvery. And unlike in most card games where the foil curls, cold foil never curls. This is rainbow foil. This is the generic foil that almost all card games use. That becomes piatos. No, that becomes a Pringles after a few days. So yes, this is the reason why we put it. But it's a cheaper version. Okay, so for his equipment, he's using the Mandible Claws. As you can see, I had to proxy one card because I forgot to bring the other Mandible Claw. The reason why he can have 2 equipments is because it says claws one-handed, meaning he can have 2 one-handed weapons. And Sir Phil, will you please read the ability of your hero?
With pleasure. Am I pronouncing it right? Reinar?
Yes, Reinar.
Reinar. Once again, whenever you discard a card with 6 or more power, during your action phase, Intimidate. Target hero banishes face down a random card from their hand at the beginning of the end phase. Return all cards banished this way to their owner's hand.
Yes, so it basically prevents proper blocking for your opponent.
So more or less on a normal day, how many cards like do we start out with?
It depends on the bottom left, which is the number over here. So this is called our intellect. So I can start with 4 cards in hand, and whenever it's my turn to end, I go up to the maximum hand size. Same with Rhinar. So I'm using Prism. Her ability is once per turn instant. I have to pay 2 resource. This is 1 and 1. Resource is mana.
Yes.
And then I'll banish a card from my soul. This is a unique trait for the light talent, because only the light talent allows you to put cards in your soul. Up to that for the time being, of course. So after I banish a card from my soul, I will create a Spectral Shield token. Tokens are they technically function the same as in every card game. You just create them out of nowhere. As you can see, Spectral Shields. So this is a defensive card, in which if my hero is dealt damage, instead I'll break this and prevent 1 damage.
Nice.
So this is an aura, so it will stay on the field. I'll show it to you later.
Oh yeah, so more or less like on a typical day, like how many cards are in the main deck, minimum and maximum?
So for the minimum, for Blitz, it has to be 40. Exactly 40, no more, no less. And you will have sideboard, but your only sideboards are your equipment. So unlike other card games where there are 3 games, so you can you have to sideboard. You can't sideboard in the first game, right? In other games, and you have to sideboard in second and third. In Flesh and Blood, there's only best of ones. You have to sideboard during the first game. You can only see their heroes. Their weapons will be weapons and armors will be face down before the start of the game. So you have to assume what kind of cards is he using, which cards do I need to counter that hero.
To assume the worst.
Yes. So in Blitz, you can only have sideboard for equipment. So that's only these 4 and then your weapon. But in Classic Constructed, which is at least 60 cards, maximum, no maximum, as long as it reaches the 80 limit. Because your equipment also counts for the 80 limit. So usually people just go minimum for consistency's sake, 60, and then 5 equipments. And then there's usually 15 sideboard, unless they want more equipments to sideboard, because there are some equipments that are useless. For example, Wizard, you can't use your blocks against wizards. You have to use your, what do you call that, Arcane Barrier, because it prevents damage.
That's another Yu-Gi-Oh card I remember.
Okay, so we'll have to go with the finer details for the cards. So let's use our equipment as an example, since we've already seen them. So as you can see on the equipments, they have a block value on the bottom right. The block value is how much you can prevent.
How much damage I can prevent?
Yes, for an attack that it goes to you. So for example, this one.
Block right here.
This is the power value, which is 6.
Okay.
So I can attack him for 6, and he can use this equipment to block for 2. But equipments usually have an ability that happens after blocking. So for this, it says Blade Break. So what happens with Blade Break? After the combat chain closes, when you use this to block, it gets destroyed. It goes to the graveyard. Same with the Fiandel Spring Tunic. I think you have a Battle Worn there. Yes, here.
Okay.
So this card says Battle Worn. What does Battle Worn do? After you use it to block, instead of breaking it, you put a -1/-1 counter on it until it has no block value. But you can still continue to block with it, but it just blocks for 0.
And there's this thing that they say called combat chains.
Yes. So combat chains occur when, for example, I'll attack.
Yes.
And I won't close the combat chain because I'll have a card that says go again. I can still attack you again and again and again until I have no cards in hand, or I tell you I'll pass the turn. I'll pass priority, or I won't have the card that says go again.
Okay. What's the what's more or less the ideal winning condition in Flesh and Blood?
Turn your opponent's life to 0.
And how many life do we have?
Bottom right of your hero.
Bottom right of hero. So I have
20.
yes, 20.
And
So parang similar to Magic.
This is Blitz, so that's why it's 20. If it's CC, if it's classic constructed, it's gonna be 40. Because it's times 2 of the HP. Because wizards have lower HP. Because they can play during your turn. Okay, so let's just ready the life counter over here. Okay.
It even has its own app.
Yes, this is the app we use. This is what is it called? Fab Counter. Made by our friends from America, which they shared to us. Okay, so these are the card types found in my deck. So I'm using Prism, so I will be able to use any light, illusionist, or generic card. So my Prism is about auras, so that's why I'm using this card. It's called Passing Mirage, which is an aura. Auras stay on the field. And they also give your hero effects. So for, let's say, Passing Mirage, it says your first illusionist attack each turn loses and can't gain Phantasm. The reason why illusionists are unique is because their cards have power over their value. For example, this is just 1 to cast, but it deals 7. What's their weakness? If, let's say, Sir Field has a card.
That's the thing I'm supposed to use. I thought it was.
So if a card has 6 or more base power, as you can see here, actually it's not base power. As long as a card gets to 6 or more power when it defends, you break my card. For example, I attack you for 7 and you will use it to block later. This goes to the graveyard without even dealing the trample damage to you.
I see.
So that's the weakness of illusion. So imagine I'm using an illusion on you, but because you're too strong, you just pass through the illusion. You'll say, ugh. So you'll just shrug it off. That's the weakness of illusions. So this is my aura. Now, as I shown you before, this is my attack. The illusionist action attack. So attacks happen by putting it in the combat chain. So how do you play it? You have to check your upper right. Upper right is over here. The upper right is your cost. So my cost is 1. How do you pay for it? You pay for the cards in your hand as well. So it says 1. So how do you get your mana? This is the mana on the upper left. So using your cards in hand, you will pitch. Pitch is on the left side. You just put it here. Or if you're right-handed, you put it here. I'm using an inverted one.
I'm left-handed too,
so we play the same way.
Yeah.
So we put it over here. So how much resource does it give?
3 reds.
Yes. So how much does this cost?
That costs, according to this, it says.
No, it's the cost 1. Is right. Yeah. What you will do is, since it costs 1, you have to minus it to 3.
Gotcha.
So how much will you get? So you will have 2 remaining, right?
Yes.
So mana or resource does not fade after using. You have to pass the turn in order for it to fade. So you will put a dice or any marker that says, so I still have 2 resource remaining. So if I attack you, this is where my action chain starts. Combat chain starts. So Miraging Metamorph has 7 power as well as Phantasm. And when it attacks you, you can use any card to block. Let's get a card that doesn't have 6 power, so I can explain how damage works here. So, for example, you'll have 4 cards in hand, right? You can use these cards when I attack you. I'll give you a priority. It says it's your defense. It's time for your defense. Before defense reactions, there's still a defending step. How do you block? You put a card from your hand in front of the attack.
So no need to tap and
no. Okay. As long as it's not a defense reaction, you do not need to pay for the card. Even if this costs 7, you can just put it in front of my card.
I see.
So if you block it, you can block it with any number of cards from your hand. For example, you like the cards in your hand. You wouldn't want to block with them. You can keep it and say, I'll just block with 1 card. Or you can even block with none. So you have 3 defense, right?
Yes.
I have 7 power.
So in other words, I take 4 damage.
You'll take 4 damage, correct. It's trample. Every card has trample, even like in Magic. Even if it doesn't say trample, it just passes through. So that's 7 minus 3, 4. So the combat, that's the combat chain. after that, it still doesn't go to the graveyard until you say close the combat chain, or you play an action that isn't an attack, like this. Okay, so that explains the attack action cards.
So give or take, like in the terms of flow, so we start basically like with like draw phase, something like that.
Yes, there are 3 phases.
Okay, 3 phases.
So that's the... We don't start in draw phase unlike other card games. This is similar to Keyforge. We do at the end of turn.
That's another story.
Yes, that's another story. We do at the end of turn to our maximum hand size. So I'll just go over with the remaining types, and then we'll just start a game so I can explain how it works.
Exactly, yes.
So this is the ally, similar to Aura, it stays on the field. Instants. Instants is similar to Magic. You can use them. However, unlike Magic, you can't use them anytime. You can use them on your opponent's turn, you can use them on your turn, but only when you have the priority. So I'll explain when you have a priority. And lastly is the defense reactions, in which you can use after defending before damage phase.
So, more or less, like going back to Dibla, winning condition wise, you have to
turn your opponent's life to 0.
Yes.
Yes.
Does decking out still also count? If ever.
Funny thing, that's what I've been saying, that you get exhausted. The term is you get fatigued, meaning you don't have cards in your deck, but the game still goes on. Your opponent can still smash your face again and again.
So in other words, even if you don't have any more cards in your main
deck, you don't lose.
It still goes on as long as you have life points.
Yeah. So your opponents can just beat you up for free.